So Science's Sport Beta Fuel is sold out, but fortunately, it's pretty easy to make it yourself. All it takes is maltodextrin, fructose, citric acid, sodium citrate, and xanthan gum and gellan gum, and water. This is gonna be way cheaper than buying this beta fuel. You can do it yourself with easy ingredients. This only took me like 30 minutes, and you can scale this up. Let's go over quickly what these ingredients are doing. So these are obviously the carbohydrates. Maltodextrin is a sugar. Well, technically it's a small carbohydrate that's not exactly a sugar. There's like 9 glucoses bound together that dissolve extremely fast into glucose, which is sugar. Fructose is another kind of sugar. The citric acid and the sodium citrate maintain a particular pH. So we don't want it to be too acidic, we don't want it to be too basic. We want it to be something that the stomach can handle. Sodium citrate acts as a buffer with the citric acid. So this is our source of H+ ions. This is our source of OH- ions. If you don't remember those from chemistry class, this is the basic part of the reaction. This is the acid part of the reaction. When we combine these two, we can tolerate large fluctuations in pH in additions of more hydrogen ions or OH- ions in the surrounding solution without changing the actual pH of the gel. That means in the stomach, it's not going to screw up the surrounding pH of your stomach itself. Our 2 gums are to make a gel, and specifically with the 2 of these, we get a gel that's really flowy. It's still like a viscous gel, but it's not super sticky and you can get it down really quickly. One caveat with the gellan gum is that it forms a gel in heat and acidic conditions. So we're gonna dissolve it first in lukewarm water and then heat that up and then add the acid, and then it's gonna form a gel, and then we can mix it up with the rest of the stuff. And that's one reason why we needed the citric acid, to maintain that slightly acidic environment. If you are going to start making your own gels and in general doing chemistry experiments, there's some essential equipment that you should get. I have 3 scales here. This is a normal kitchen scale. It'll measure in like the tens of grams. This one is a gram scale, and it can get down to like 1 gram. And this one is a milligram scale. So this one I used for the citric acid to get 0.12 grams. This one I used for the gellan gum to get 1 gram. And this one I used for the water to get 100 grams or milliliters. And now we're gonna mix these 3. So dissolving 1 gram of gellan gum in 100 grams or 100 milliliters of water, and 0.12 grams of citric acid. And this is room temperature water. You can see it's already forming a bit of a gel. Now we're gonna dissolve 1 gram of xanthan gum into 342 grams of water, which is the remaining water that we're gonna use for the whole gel. And again, this is room temperature water. Xanthan gum clumps pretty easily. You can see that after stirring for a few minutes, we still have a bunch of clumps in here. You can either use a blender for that, or we can just kind of let it sit for a few minutes and come back to it. So this 342 grams of water was calculated based on 1,000 grams of total mass for this gel. We had 100 grams of water with the gellan gum, the 342 here. The rest is going to be our dry ingredients. So we've actually waited quite a few hours for this to fully homogenize, and there's only a few clumps left. I would recommend blending. So now we want to mix these 2 and apply just a little bit of heat until they really homogenize and form a nice gel. I'm using a double boiler here, which just means that this is a glass Pyrex over some water so that it doesn't boil. We want to keep it under boiling. And the heat just makes this dissolve a little bit better and form a nice homogeneous mixture, specifically for the gellan gum. While the gel is heating up, we can measure out our maltodextrin and fructose and mix them together. 300 grams of maltodextrin. There we go. And 230 grams of fructose. So that's a ratio of 0.76 fructose to 1 glucose, or in this case, maltodextrin. You don't need to use a thermometer, but I have one. So we're up to about 115. We don't need it that hot. We're just gonna heat up a little bit. This is probably fine. And then I just wanna see if I can pour it back in the container. Smooth. That's what we want. And by the way, heating this up only took about 5 minutes. The next thing is to dissolve the sodium citrate in here. Remember, the sodium citrate acts as the OH- source in the acid-base buffer. This is 25.5 grams of sodium citrate is to produce a pH of 7. So of even pH, not acidic, not basic, which should make it sit really well in the stomach. You'll notice that we added the citric acid first, the gellan gum. That's because gellan gum gels really well in an acid. And now, once it's already a gel, we can add the sodium citrate and bring it back up to neutral. You can see it's still a pretty nice, smooth, free-flowing gel. I'm just gonna use this bowl. Now the maltodextrin. This one is clumping a little bit more than the fructose. At this point, to get the clumps out, you have a few options. You can get a whisk and just really go hard at it. You can probably wait a bit and some of the clumps will just naturally get out. Or what I'm gonna do is just throw it in the blender. From here, you can pour it directly into the container you're gonna use. I have this nice reusable goo container, and I've already weighed the container so I can measure this to see how much of the carbs is in there after the fact. Oh yeah, that's not bad at all. Perfect.
Tastes like Science and Sport Beta Fuel, which I've conveniently never had because it's sold out all the time.
So here's our final product. This is gonna be way cheaper than buying Cis Beta Fuel or any gels for that matter. You can do it yourself at home with easy ingredients. This only took me like 30 minutes. You see how much you get, and you can scale this up. Just like make a ton at once. The more of the maltodextrin and fructose that you buy, the cheaper it'll be. These things are super great, and with this particular kind of gel, you can see how liquidy it is. It comes out just real easily. Yeah. I mean, you could eat that so fast. Look at that. So this goo flask is a little over 35 grams, and the whole thing was a little over 200 grams. So subtracting out the 35 grams of mass in this thing comes out to about 180 grams of substrate in here. We had 53% of the substrate as carbohydrates, which means one of these is 90 grams of carbs, which is perfect. If you're trying to do high carb fueling, 90 grams per hour is a pretty good starting point, maybe a little bit less to start. So if you have one of these, just figure out how much you want to consume every 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you want to do. You can see how much you're consuming by these little handy numbers here. What's great about this is, well, obviously, Cis Beta Fuel has been sold out for a while and you can't get it. But super easy to make, and you can add your own electrolytes to it, which is amazing. So if you're a really heavy sweater, just figure out how many milligrams of extra sodium, magnesium, and potassium you need. Add that to the mixture. You don't have to worry about adding your own sodium or taking salt pills if you're getting your carbs in. And you can even label one of these as like low sodium, another is middle sodium, high sodium, so that you can regulate your electrolyte impact depending on the conditions. If it's a really sunny day, you might go for the high sodium mixture. If you've made this yourself or you want to make modifications to it, let me know in the comments and we can try that in the future. If you have made it and you've tried it out on a run and it works really well, or if it doesn't work at all and you start puking, whatever happens to you, please let me know as well and we can try to fix that. I have tried this, it works pretty well for me.